Hi, it's Jane, and in this video I want to break down my process of painting a simple watercolor portrait. This video was requested and I hope you'll find my tips helpful. In one of my latest videos, I showed you a process of painting a monochromatic portrait study with just one color, and this approach is much more simple than what I'm gonna talk about today. Today, the focus will be more on the finished look of the illustration. For this approach, I tend to adjust the way I paint as well as the materials I use. If I need the final painting to have more details and to handle more layers, I tend to reach for 100% cotton watercolor paper. The brand that I'm currently using for this portrait is Arteza. When I'm creating a study, it's okay for me to sketch directly onto my watercolor paper, but if I need my paper to handle a lot of painting layers, then I'm extra careful and usually don't sketch directly to it, but on a separate piece of paper and then just trace the drawing to my watercolor paper using Lightbox. My strategy is to first deal with the base color of the skin. I already explained how I mix the skin tones using just a few colors in a separate video, and I will link that down below so you can find it and check it out. The base color for this particular face is very light, and so I will be using only a diluted mixture of permanent alizarin crimson with some raw sienna. The initial washes are very transparent and I lay them down carefully, only avoiding those parts of the face that are lightest. I try my best not to leave out the hard edges, and to get rid of the hard edge, just use a damp brush to soften it. Demonstrate one more time, here it is. Place the color and then soften it. There you go. It takes a bit of practice, I admit, but you'll get the hang of it. These shadowy parts of the face get trickier at tight spots like around the eyes and nose, so I tend to grab a smaller brush for better control. I try to imagine every shadow as a simple shape and just paint that. Make sure to dry every area before placing more transparent shadows, because trying to paint over a semi-dry wash will most likely cause blooms and messes. Once I'm done with the base skin tone, I move to define the base for the rest of the portrait. I choose the eye color and hair color, which I place quite lightly at this point to where it belongs. I usually do not bother painting the hair too detailed. I find larger uniform areas and treat them similarly to the skin and add floating hair around those areas to make sure that it doesn't look like a helmet. Next layer of paint usually adds blush to the face. Some areas get more red than others, and the particular shade of red to use also varies from person to person. In most cases I use alizarin crimson for all the redder areas, but this model required a more orangey tone. Next part is all about deepening the shadows and using actual shading mixture of colors. As explained in the color mixing video in a greater detail, I use the basic skin tone mixture and add a cool color into it. It's either blue, green or neutral tint, also depending on the skin that I'm painting. In this case, I darken the skin tone mixture with neutral tint. Sometimes it feels scary to place these darker tones on your currently rather pale looking painting, but that is because visually you can only compare it to what you already painted. As you progress with the painting, the darker paint will be required to achieve enough contrast. What helps me personally is to assign the entire color palette on a separate piece of watercolor paper that you see by my left side. I am usually trying to compare my tones with this color chart rather than with what I already have painted on my main piece of paper. Here comes the detailing part. I'm using a thin but still soft enough brush to paint lashes and eyebrows. If you are worried that your lines might turn out weird looking and you won't be able to correct them, I recommend painting lightly at first and then going over the successful lines with the darker paint. At this point in my personal painting process, I need to start adjusting and comparing. I already have down all the main colors and have defined the most important shapes, but the process of careful observation and comparison with the reference takes it to the next level. These changes and additions are rather subtle, but can really make a difference. Most of these adjustments are tonal shifts. For example, some shadow parts are still not dark enough and I need to paint another layer on top. This is the most common adjustment that I usually spend quite some time with. When you work for hours on your painting, it happens that you lose the objectivity, and what others clearly see at first glance, you can easily miss. My tip is to take a little break and take a photo of your painting with your phone, and if possible then transfer it to your computer. Side by side with a reference on my screen, I can detect problems easier and address them even during painting process rather than when it's too late. Then there is the almost last part and the last part, both ever so enjoyable. The almost last part includes splatters that represent freckles and add in highlights, which I use white gouache for. I feel I have much better control over the placement when working with gouache and a thin brush than with a drawing tool such as gel pen, for example. Gouache also dries non-permanently, which means I can remove the highlight with a damp brush if I overdid it. And the last part includes adding decorations in form of floating hair around the face and expressive splatters that I love to add for most of my portraits. Takes just a minute, but I guess some courage too. Once you paint these strokes, there is no going back. But I encourage you to try this approach. It can be very rewarding and also fun. Lastly, there is a ton of ways how to stylize a portrait, and for this one I went with adding magnolia drawings with micron pens. Sometimes it helps me to plan the composition beforehand on my iPad, but more often I'm too lazy for that and just improvise, and I got lucky this time, it worked. And here is the final painting. By the way, some of you keep asking in the comments about the option to purchase prints of my works, and while at this time I do not have an active online store for international customers, you can visit my portfolio at Society 6 and purchase prints from there, including this portrait. I probably won't be able to run an online store myself anytime soon, so at least this is an option for you to get my design if you like it. And by the way, I purchased from the site my own printed designs a couple of times and I love the quality, which is why I don't mind recommending it. So that's that for today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment and let me know if you found my tips helpful. And I'll see you next week. Bye bye.